Rob Pincus here for Walk the Talk America. I want to discuss some options for you if you want to help someone secure themselves from firearms, secure their firearms from themselves, but you personally don't want to or can't legally take possession of that firearm. Now, why would this happen? Obviously, we're not talking about any kind of gun restrictions or gun control. We don't want to get the government involved in these situations. We're simply talking about a friend trying to help out a friend, a family member trying to help out a family member. Maybe it's an extension. Maybe it's a friend of a friend trying to help somebody out because they are in crisis, or they see a situation in their lives where it just doesn't make sense for them to have access to firearms, or maybe even just to have the firearms in their home. Maybe they're trying to help somebody else out. They're taking somebody in, person struggling with alcohol issues. Maybe they're taking somebody in who has a young child. For whatever reason, they don't want the guns in their house, and now they've come to you, or you've come to them and you've said, hey, let me help you right now. I can tell you're acting impulsively. There's a mental health issue going on. There's a stress issue going on. There's a substance abuse issue going on. Maybe it's temporary. Maybe it's long-term. You want to help. Now, in some states, you could simply take the firearms into your possession. It's called a private transfer. A person could agree to give you the guns as a gift, and you keep them and you give them back when you're done. But that may not be legal. There are a lot of states where that isn't legal. It's actually a felony to take possession of a gun from someone who is the legal owner if you have not gone through a background check, gone through a dealer. And again, that creates paperwork, creates cost, creates some regulation and officialness around the act of just trying to help a friend that you may not be comfortable with, they may not be comfortable with. On the other hand, you may not be a person who's inclined to take a firearm into your home, right? You may not be interested in taking the gun into your home for your own personal reasons. You don't like guns. You don't know anything about guns. You have other family members who don't want a gun in the house. So you don't want the legal liability, the responsibility of having that firearm. Maybe you don't have a way to safely store it in your home, or at least you don't perceive of one. So you're against the idea in the first place. All of these things lead us to the moment where we have to still try to help our friend, but we may not be able to take that gun into our possession. Now, if you're in that category, especially the latter category, a person who doesn't feel comfortable with guns, then you may not understand how guns work. And remember, from a legal standpoint, when we talk about a firearm, I'm going to pull this one into the screen here. This is an AR-15 type firearm. Only certain parts of this gun are the legal firearm. In this particular gun, it's this lower section here with the grip and the trigger. You can see his serial number right there. It's upside down. But that serial number, this is the only part of this that is actually a firearm. So if I were in a state that did not allow me to take possession of this from someone else without going through a dealer, I could still take possession of some other part. And in this case, I have removed what we would consider a critical part from inside of this firearm. I'm going to pop this open really quick. Normally, the bolt carrier group, would live inside of this firearm. Without this in the gun, this gun is inoperable. So for all practical purposes now, this gun is harmless until I put that back in there, load the gun, or maybe procure another one. Now, it's really important to point out that in this case, if you take the bolt carrier group from that AR, the person who still retains possession of the AR, they legally still own the gun, no legal transfer of a firearm has happened, they could just go to a gun shop or maybe go to a closet where they have another bolt carrier group and put it in the gun. This only works if the person you're dealing with is complicit with this process. I would not suggest you sneak into somebody's gun room or closet, take a part of their gun, and just assume that they can't easily replace it. This is not an unwarranted theft, right? This is something that you're working with someone on. And if someone's complicit in this, you now, especially in those situations where there's a legal issue of transferring the gun, you have just made it so that they can't impulsively grab this gun. They can't grab this gun in a state of dementia in their house when they mistake someone at the door who's trying to drop off a package for a potential threat. They can't accidentally end up shooting someone. They can't negligently shoot someone. Another person living in the house can't negligently shoot themselves. You can't have a suicidal act of an impulse act of a suicide attempt where someone's going to grab that gun and you'd be able to use it. It is functionally inoperable. And every gun you see on the wall back there, every type of gun has that. You can take away the firing pin, you can take out the trigger group, you can take out some critical component. Of course, not all components are critical. This is a magazine, for example. This is not a critical part. I could take a magazine out of a gun and the gun could still fire. There could still be a bullet inside of the chamber. The gun could be ready to fire and be very, very dangerous, very deadly. And obviously, as a person who owns a semi-automatic firearm, most of us own multiple magazines. So just again, taking something from the person's house, taking something even from the person's gun and thinking you have made the gun inoperable, that's not a situation that I would encourage or a situation that you want to get into. Another option deals with the way that the person stores their guns normally. Most responsible gun owners have a safe or some other way of locking up their gun, you could always change the code. You could go to the person and say, look, why don't I change the code? I'm going to put a code on the gun door, or put a code in the punch code that you don't know. I'm going to know the code. I'll give you the code, if there's an emergency, or at the time comes when this is passed. Maybe you've gone through the substance abuse. You've dealt with your therapy of whatever issue you're dealing with. Maybe it's an adjustment period to something like an SSRI. Someone said, this could affect my judgment. I could have suicidal impulses, something I read on the label for the next 30 days. How about you hold my guns? Or I just lock my guns up in a safe. You could even provide a safe that's yours. You go out and buy a relatively inexpensive safe. You put in a code, you keep the key, and you put the handgun or the critical component from the rifle in a small safe like this. Of course, there are large safes available that are more expensive that you can buy for a long gun. You can lock them up in any kind of metal box, a toolbox. You can lock them up, put a padlock on it. You keep the key. Ultimately, could somebody break into that box? Absolutely. But again, we're assuming that someone is complicit in this process. So think about this again. You can take a part of the gun. You can secure the gun at the person's home behind a lock or with a code that only you know. Maybe it's someone else inside the home that does that. There are also some organizations that exist that if you don't personally want to get involved, and they may not want to, obviously call the police. You don't want to call the police. You don't want to call even a mental health professional at this point. Holdmyguns.org, or obviously you can go to WTTA.org, and we can help put you in touch with gun shops and dealers who might take a gun into their inventory, gunsmiths who might take a gun into their inventory. And then, of course, when the person was ready to take possession of those guns back, they would need to go through whatever official process is appropriate in that state. Usually it would be a simple background check. There might be a fee involved in those situations, of course. So just because you don't want to personally take the guns in, or you aren't legally able to take the guns in, doesn't mean that you can't do something to help that person or to get in the way of what they might do impulsively or irrationally when under the influence of whatever mental crisis is going on, or some kind of a substance. Also, one of the things that I find really important for any gun owner to do is just take a simple step, and we refer to that step as cause a pause. Hashtag cause a pause. You can see some videos, some pictures online, some examples of that. The way cause a pause works is you put something next to where you store your gun. If it's in a safe, great. If it's in a box, with a padlock, so be it. If it's just hidden in the back of a closet, but you're the only person that lives there, that might still be considered very responsible. But wherever that gun is, if you put a little something there, I think of something like this. This is a little flag with a sheriff's emblem. This was given to my daughter. This would be the kind of thing that when she gets older and she has firearms in her house, she might put this, just on the wall next to her safe, or let it sit on top of the box that the gun is in. And the pride that she has when she looks at the American flag, and she thinks about her family members who've been in law enforcement. She thinks about the day that she was given this, that she's seen pictures of when one of the sheriffs here in Florida gave this to her. This is going to remember she's going to remember all the things that are important to her, and that remind her of the patriotism that surrounds the Second Amendment and her ownership of guns, and how it would be tragic to have an accident or to do something impulsive or negligent with that gun in a rush, or in a confused state, or in a demented state, or whatever it is. That may kick that memory in. Maybe it's a picture of the person you're married to. Maybe it's a picture of your kids. Maybe it's a picture of that motorcycle that you want to buy someday. It's a picture of your favorite place that you've ever been and you want to go back to, or the place you've never been that's on your bucket list. Just something to cause a pause, especially in the case of an impulsive suicidal act. This can be something you recommend to your friends, maybe who aren't ready to give up their guns, but are ready to acknowledge that having a firearm is a huge responsibility. The number one responsibility, of course, is to ourselves and those in the home or that live with us. The responsibility we have to society at large, of course, is also important. And all of these things come into play when we talk about access to a firearm under duress, access to a firearm under the influence of drugs or alcohol, access to a firearm while you're struggling with some mental health crises. So when you're ready to get involved, and when that person is ready for you to get involved, there are a lot of options other than just taking the gun. Again, reach out to us at WTTA.org for more thoughts, or if we can be of further assistance.